So, it's nearly certain that we're not getting an Acolyte Season 2. The show was very expensive, it didn't do super well, there was pretty significant audience fall off, and it seems like the era hasn't quite ingratiated itself to general audiences yet. And listen, if you're watching this video, you probably watched my reactions as the show was releasing. I'm not going to pretend that I'm a huge fan, but I also didn't think it was the absolute worst thing ever. And at the end, we did get some interesting tidbits which ultimately we may never see touched on again. There's strands which will never be concluded. Or if they are, it will be in a novel or comic. So, we did get one new source of lore recently, and that was the Acolyte visual guide. Now, as a bit of reference, these visual guides are almost always written by Pablo Hidalgo or someone else on the lore team. While they are illustrative of how the lore was designed at the time, I can't count on two hands the number of times something from a visual guide has later been retconned. Still, it's pretty clear that they designed the Acolyte to have potentially more than one season, so I don't think it's controversial to say that there was backstory thought up for a lot of these characters and ideas. So, I've looked at the book and I want to focus on especially the Sith, Darth Plageuis, the Stranger, all that and more. So, right off the introduction, we get a bit of history. In the Acolyte and Star Wars canon as a whole aren't really straying far from what we got in Legends, which makes sense because the history of the Republic and the Jedi is established pretty firmly in Episode 1. The introduction reminds us that after the defeat of Sith conquerors, the Republic emerges from the ashes of a galactic conflict to reach unprecedented heights in the long stretch of peace that follows. It's an era known as the High Republic and will be remembered as a settled age where the galaxy marches towards a darkening future. This is pretty similar to what Legends had with the Ruusan Reformation. There's pre-Ruusan and post-Ruusan, sort of the 1,000 years or so before the Phantom Menace, where the Sith outright disappeared from the galaxy and were thought extinct. I think largely because of the show not continuing, the lore isn't really ready to define Khmer, the Stranger, and his role within the hidden Sith order. My opinion personally is that he is a Sith, he is the apprentice of Plageuis, but other theories are that he was perhaps an apprentice, but one Plageuis thought dead, one that he cast away and is now sort of doing his own thing. We'll come back to that later. Anyway, one really interesting choice comes on the map image. Specifically, we have the unknown planet, which we see feature at the end of the season, sort of Khmer's base. When the show released, I speculated that would be Baldemnik, and if you look, it's in the exact same location that Baldemnik was in Star Wars Legends, down the Perlemian trade route. There's an entire section later on the planet which references an intelligent reptile species. This would have been the Conmi of Star Wars Legends, and of course, it's specifically in the same sector, the Oral sector, and it matches the appearance of Baldemnik, which appeared in, most notably, if you're wondering why I'm bringing this up, the novel Plageuis. The book, of course, does actually confirm that, yes, this was Plageuis as well. Baldemnik was important in the novel because Darth Plageuis and his Sith master, Darth Tenebris, actually had a cortosis mine on the planet, something, again, we see in the Acolyte. Baldemnik is especially notable because it's the location where Plageuis kills his master, moving up the chain in the Rule of Two, but it was also seen as a location where fate started to almost collide. Let me read directly from the first page of Plageuis. Darth Bane would have appreciated our efforts. Darth Bane's early years, Plageuis says, referring to his early years, by the way, which he spent as a miner, carrying on the ancestral business. Bane's seminal years, Tenebris corrects. What more appropriate way for us to close the circle than by mimicking the Sithari's seminal efforts, Tenebris continued. We weave ourselves into the warp and weft of the tapestry he created. In the 1,000 years since his death, Bane had become deified, the powers attributed to him legendary, and indeed, what more appropriate place for his disciples to complete the circle. Plageuis told himself that in profound obscurity, deep within an escarpment that walled in azure spans of Baldemnik's northern sea. So yeah, I just find it interesting that, again, Plageuis, who, directly ties to Palpatine, again, is preparing the Sith to rule in a hidden island on what will almost certainly eventually be Baldemnik. Anyway, sticking to the Sith for today's video, there are a few other things which I noticed. I don't overthink this one because we know he's taking over an apothecary, and one of the big sort of central bits is that there's a plant which is useful for revitalizing aged skin. Most likely, that's just meant to indicate it's something the shop owner is selling, but I guess there's also the possibility that Kamir is using it as well. Really, that section is more about his persona and how he really personifies what we learn about how the Sith should be from the Plageuis novel. The Sith are outnumbered. They cannot fight the Jedi in a traditional sense, and one of their best abilities has to be blending in and manipulating people. The far more interesting page is the Stranger, which is sort of his alter ego, his Sith alter ego, right? Probably, but maybe not. The page actually says specifically after describing his character that it is entirely possible he is a pretender to that lineage, of course, referring to the long-dead Sith legacy. On the same page, however, it also says, it is the man that Jedi in May have only known as Kamir, but that too is an alias. The Sith has no name, and the simple character of Kamir was an effective ruse that fooled even his closest apprentice. So yeah, I don't think this book even has really figured out exactly what the Stranger is. It's interesting that Kamir is confirmed as not being any meaningful name. It's just something he also used. But again, even on the next page, it says, in short order, the Sith has killed all of the task force but Saul. And unfortunately, that's really all we get. It's a pretty decent visual guide. I'm not going to go over everything else. It's mostly in order from an episode perspective. But of course, I do look forward to knowing your opinion on whether Kamir is a Sith or not, whether he's currently a student of Plageuis, perhaps he was a student who was sent away or who Plageuis attempted to kill. I don't know. Either way, we know that Plageuis does take another eventually, Palpatine, so Kamir's got to go at some point, or whatever his name is. All right, I'm going to end with a quick hashtag AskEck. This one comes from MarMarBunbun, who says, is there any chance you'll disable auto-dubbing? The AI voice in Spanish is more disturbing than anything the Vong wrought upon the galaxy. First of all, I don't really know a whole lot about auto-dubbing. It was a feature YouTube rolled out. They basically said, hey, we're going to translate your video into other languages. I thought that was a good idea, but if the AI dubbing is bad, of course I will turn it off. I haven't heard any real feedback, so maybe let me know down in the comments whether it's good or not. And also, I'm curious about this. If you're, say, on Spanish YouTube, can you turn off the auto dub so you're listening to my original audio, which of course would be useful if you speak primarily Spanish, but also English as a second language, or even if you're in a country where Spanish or any language is more popular. Just let me know your thoughts down below, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.